The moment we've been waiting almost 2 years for is finally upon us. The Indianapolis 500 is back home again in its traditional May date after last year's pandemic-delayed and closed-door Indianapolis 500, which for the full 200 laps felt fairly normal in abnormal times, with Takuma Sato taking his second Indianapolis 500 win. But things this year are much more normal. Fans are welcome back into the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and the hallowed grounds will once again see Bump Day as 35 cars, teams, and drivers will be vying for the 33 coveted starting spots. This video will hopefully introduce you to those cars, drivers, storylines going in to these so important 2 weeks. In the great words of Paul Page, if you don't have a favorite driver going into this video, you'll hopefully have one at the end. Now, as this is a Bandwagoner's guide, there are a lot of fans coming over from other versions of motorsport where drivers have transitioned to IndyCar racing. However, for this year's Indianapolis 500, some of those big names are not actually participating in this race. So no, we won't be talking about Jimmy or Romain or Fred this year, but there's a great group of drivers. So let's start talking about them. We begin with the former winners. There's 9 former winners in this year's Indianapolis 500, and that is the most entered in the race since the fabulous 1992 field. Takuma Sato is the reigning champion of the Indianapolis 500 and is already a 2-time winner. I certainly would think that Sato will have an extremely strong chance of adding a 3rd Borg-Warner trophy to his trophy cabinet. Scott Dixon looked dominant in last year's Indianapolis 500, but is still searching for his elusive 2nd Indianapolis 500 win. Should he do it this year, he would also tie Mario Andretti for 2nd on the all-time IndyCar winners list. Hard to believe Scott Dixon has been this successful in IndyCar. He's one of the true legends of the sport. Will Power returns once again. The 2018 Indianapolis 500 winner is always fun to watch, particularly on starts and restarts. He just signed a contract extension with Team Penske, so life's looking pretty good for the Australian driver right now. Simon Pagenaud is in a contract year at Team Penske. The last time he was in a contract year with Team Penske, he won the Indianapolis 500. And continues, of course, to this day to race for Team Penske. He's looking to repeat that in 2021. Alexander Rossi won the Indianapolis 500 under legendary circumstances. The great clutch and coast race as he coasted across the finish line barely with any fuel left in the tank. Alexander Rossi has established himself as one of the strongest drivers at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but has been snake-bitten since his win in 2016. Rossi is certainly a candidate to win his 2nd. Just gotta have all the luck line up. Ryan Hunter-Reay is the 2014 winner of the Indianapolis 500, but certainly appears to be in the twilight of his career. However, there always seems to be a little bit of magic Hunter-Reay is able to pull out of his bag of tricks at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I wouldn't count him out for a 2nd win just yet. Who said anything about retirement? Tony Kanaan went from wanting to retire last year with AJ Foyt Racing to one of the strongest cars in the field. He drives the car that is regularly driven throughout the IndyCar series by Jimmy Johnson, so if you're on the Jim Jam train, hey, maybe you want to jump on the Kanaan bandwagon. He's the 2013 winner of the Indianapolis 500 after all, and one of the most popular drivers in IndyCar racing still. The return of Juan Pablo Montoya for the first time since 2017 is an extremely intriguing story. Of course, he's returning to McLaren, a team which he raced for in Grand Prix racing, but looking at his wins themselves, 2000 he raced for Chip Ganassi Racing and won in his first try. 2015 he won for Team Penske, and that was only his 2nd year with that team. So in his first year at the Indianapolis 500 at least, with Arrow McLaren SP, what kind of magic does Juan Pablo Montoya still have? It's certainly going to be weird enough seeing Helio Castroneves drive a pink car. But even weirder so is the fact that for the first time ever, Helio Castroneves is entered for the Indianapolis 500, and he's not with Team Penske. However, Meyer Shank Racing should not be counted out for victory. They are becoming a real contender in the IndyCar Series, and Helio will certainly help them at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where he's won 3 times and is looking for his record-tying 4th. And now that we've met the legends, let's meet the rookies who are aspiring to be the next great Indy drivers. Up until just about the entry deadline, it looked like Cody Ware would be entered in the number 52 for Dale Coyne with Rick Ware Racing. However, at the last minute, citing sponsorship concerns, this entry was pulled. Therefore, perhaps we can say Cody Ware is the first bump of 2021. Do you like underdog stories? Well, look no further than R.C. Anderson and Top Gun Racing. Top Gun Racing has never so much as entered an IndyCar Series event, and yet they are making their debut at the Indianapolis 500. R.C. Anderson has raced in IndyCar before, but never on a full-time basis and never at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But this is a team of dreamers. In fact, they're fans too. They've got a tribute livery to Al Unser Sr.'s famous Johnny Lightning special. If you have a sentimental favorite or perhaps a dream that you yourself someday will be involved in the Indianapolis 500, you might want to root for Top Gun Racing. A Fittipaldi hasn't even been entered at the Indianapolis 500 since 1995, but that may be a good omen for young Pietro, as the last time there was a Fittipaldi in the Indianapolis 500, Christian Fittipaldi finished a strong second place to the race winner, Jacques Villeneuve. New Zealander Scott McLaughlin is one of the most decorated IndyCar rookies we've seen in quite some time. He brings 2 Australian Supercars championships to Team Penske, and really should not be counted out for a potential victory in the Indianapolis 500. He scored a podium in his very first oval track start at Texas Motor Speedway, and the boss man, the captain, Roger Penske, compared his driving talents to that of Rick Mears, 4-time Indianapolis 500 winning driver. That comparison should not be taken lightly, and Scott, I hate to tell you this, buddy, no pressure. Now that we have the rookies and the winners out of the way, here are the rest of the drivers that will be looking to add their name to the Borg-Warner Trophy. J.R. Hildebrand moves away from the Dreyer and Reinbold team that he's been racing for the last several years to the legendary A.J. Foyt Racing team, and J.R. will be carrying legendary colors as well. The number 1 and livery on his car represent his team owner's very first win at the Indianapolis 500 way back in 1961. It was the first of 4 wins for Supertex. J.R. Hildebrand is hoping that this legendary paint scheme will bring him his first Indianapolis win. Joseph Newgarden is a 2-time IndyCar Series champion, but he's never won the big one. Joseph is looking to bring the Borg-Warner Trophy to his car owner, series owner, and racetrack owner, Roger Penske. Canadian Dalton Kellett returns for his second season with A.J. Foyt Racing. He had no problems qualifying last year. I would expect the same this year. Pato O'Ward, the Mexican driver driving for Arrow McLaren SP, is one of the hottest prospects currently in the series. He took a win at Texas Motor Speedway, and that was his first in IndyCar. You have to think that the floodgates are about to open, and last year he was the Rookie of the Year at the Indianapolis 500. Can he translate that into a victory? I think the chances are good. Sweden's Felix Rosenqvist has that tiger's blood, at least based on his new livery for the Indianapolis 500, but he's got to be feeling pretty good having moved from Chip Ganassi Racing over to Arrow McLaren SP. Many insiders have Arrow McLaren SP pegged as one of the front-running teams potentially for this year's Indianapolis 500. Keeping with the Swedish connection, Marcus Ericsson returns for his third Indianapolis 500 and second with Chip Ganassi Racing. Last year's attempt ended in a crash. It's taken Chip Ganassi quite a long time to try to find a suitable successor to the success of Scott Dixon, and he may have found it in young Spaniard Alex Palou. He scored a victory in his very first race for Chip Ganassi Racing earlier this year at Barber Motorsports Park. This will be his second Indianapolis 500, but certainly do not count him out as a threat to win the big race. Charlie Kimball returns for yet another attempt at the Indianapolis 500, once again with the A.J. Foyt Racing Team. A lot of people forget that he's pretty good in Indianapolis and scored a best finish of third place in 2015. Frenchman Sébastien Bourdais returns after a 1 year's absence, this time with A.J. Foyt Racing. Now, many scoffed at this move when it was made, but Bourdais has certainly increased the performance of the A.J. Foyt Racing Team, and it will certainly be interesting to see what his expertise can do for the team at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the only race AJ really cares about. You want to bet some smart money? Pick Graham Rahal. He finished third last year. That was the same position that his teammate Takuma Sato finished in 2019, and guess what? The next year, he won the race. Rahal looked exceptionally quick in testing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in April, and even has some pretty good luck in his livery choice for this year's Indianapolis 500. He's got the old Buddy Rice scheme from 2004, which was the first Indianapolis 500 victory for the Rahal Letterman Lanigan team. A lot of things seem to be swinging in Graham Rahal's favor. He's looking to equal his father's 1986 win. Simona Di Silvestro returns to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway after a several-year absence, and she does it with Paretta Autosport, which may not ring many bells in the ears of race fans, but I know one name that will: Team Penske, and that's who is providing the equipment to Paretta Autosport. Simona Di Silvestro might as well be viewed as a fifth Team Penske entry, and therefore should absolutely not be counted out for victory in this year's Indianapolis 500. No woman has ever achieved that feat. Another driver returning from a 1 year absence is Ed Jones, returning as well to Dale Coyne Racing, where he scored a third place finish in his first Indianapolis 500. And it's certainly possible that he and the team could do 2 positions better this year. Last year, with Santino Ferrucci at the controls, this car finished in 4th position. Local drivers always get a big cheer at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and Butler University graduate Ed Carpenter is no exception. The 3-time pole sitter of the Indianapolis 500 is capable of whipping the crowd up into a frenzy at will. Well, provided he's running up front, and that's what Ed Carpenter would like to do. Hopefully this year on lap 200 and not lap 1. Dutchman Rinus VeeKay is IndyCar's most recent winner, winning at the IndyCar Grand Prix on the Indianapolis road course. And for you Zoomers out there, he is the first driver to be sponsored in the Indianapolis 500 by cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is on the side of his car, and in fact, some of the Ed Carpenter Racing mechanics are allowed to be paid in Bitcoin. Could this be the future of sponsorships? And could Rinus VeeKay be an Indianapolis 500 winner? I think a lot of people will be picking him come May 30th. Nazareth, Pennsylvania's Sage Karam is the lone representative of the stalwart Dreyer Reinbold Racing Team, but they think it will help their team overall to go from 2 cars to 1 car. But, of course, the proof will be in the pudding. Let's see how Sage can do in the race. Yes, it's a cliche, but I'm still going to say it. If you look up the definition of determination in the dictionary, you may see a photo of Stephen Wilson. This man has worked desperately hard to be in the Indianapolis 500 and has found a way to place himself in a car that is capable of winning the race. The very same car that he very nearly won the race just 3 years ago. Colton Herta is another one of IndyCar's young driving phenoms. He's already scored a victory this year at the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, and it's worth noting for those of you who like numbers. The last time the number 26 for Andretti Autosport won at St. Petersburg, that car also won the Indianapolis 500 in the hands of Dan Weldon. We'll see if Colton Herta might be able to work a little bit of that magic this year. James Hinchcliffe is back at Andretti Autosport once again, but this time on a full-time basis. A lot of people have forgotten how quick Hinch is at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and this year with a full-time pit crew, he's a potential threat for victory. Major dark horse alert. Santucci's all jacked up on Mountain Dew, but he also may be all jacked up on winning the Indianapolis 500 in the glass of milk that will be coming with it. He finished in 4th place in the Indianapolis 500, driving for Dale Coyne Racing last year, and has now joined last year's race-winning team, Rahal Letterman Lanigan. That could be even more of a potent combination than the Mountain Dew that is powering his sponsorship. Another local Indiana driver that is a fan favorite is Noblesville's Connor Daly. He continues his partnership with Ed Carpenter Racing and the Air Force, this year paying tribute to the Tuskegee Airmen with his livery. Max Chilton is the lone representative of Carlin Racing this year at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but had some issues traveling into the country for the IndyCar Grand Prix, and the team had to withdraw the car from that race. So, if the travel issues themselves have resolved themselves, Max should be a strong contender to at least make the show. But if he misses some practice days, he may well be on the bump list. We'll have to wait and see how this all turns out. Jack Harvey has a chip on his shoulder and a lot to prove that Meyer-Shank Racing is no longer a part-time team and can mix it up with the big boys. And there's no better way to prove that you belong than to win the Indianapolis 500. Don't count Jack Harvey out, especially with the help of his new teammate, Helio Castroneves. Oh, Marco Andretti. So many things to say, and there probably could be books written about his Indianapolis 500 career. He qualified on the pole position last year, but didn't lead a single lap. Marco Andretti is now a part-time IndyCar driver. In fact, his only race this year may well end up being the Indianapolis 500. And yet, you still cannot count him out totally as a threat to win the Indianapolis 500. And if he has the same car and the same setup as last year, you certainly think he'll qualify well, but will that race pace be there? It wasn't last year. Could it be this year? We'll have to see. One thing is for certain, if an Andretti ever wins the Indianapolis 500 as a driver again, the 137,000 strong crowd will certainly sound like a 400,000 strong normal year at the Indianapolis 500. So that's it. That's your 35 car driver combinations that will be going for the 33 spots in the Indianapolis 500. All right, now's the time. Who do you think are the 2 drivers going home? Remember, there are no locked-in spots, so any of these drivers are not safe. And let's go really hard here. Who do you think, without a car turning a single lap as of the uploading of this video, who is going to win the Indianapolis 500? Let me know that down in the comment section below. Subscribe for more Indy 500 content and like the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube, and we'll see you in the next video.